For many generations, Larne was the port of entry to Northern Ireland. The harbour is dominated by the now disused Ballylumford coal-fired power station. As you arrive, look out for the memorial to those lost in the tragic 1953 disaster to the car ferry Princess Victoria, which sank in hurricane conditions, costing the lives of most of her passengers and crew. Today's passengers are more likely to arrive in the busy port of Belfast. From the ferry, a 15-minute bus ride brings you through the heart of Dockland to the city centre and possibly the finest city hall in the United Kingdom. Churches and religion play a much greater part in the life of Ireland, both north and south, than they do on the British mainland. St Anne's Church of Ireland Cathedral in Belfast is well worth a visit. Not far away, just on the edge of the city centre, is the outwardly unusual but inwardly stunning Catholic Church of St Malachy. The Crumlin Road Jail was in use until 1996 and is now open to the public. It's famously connected by a tunnel to the courthouse across the road. Several of Northern Ireland's best-known politicians spent time as inmates here during the Troubles, and here is where they ended up. Stormont, seat of Northern Ireland's Parliament. I sat in Martin McGuinness's seat. Belfast Castle sits on high ground to the north of the city. The castle itself isn't open to the public, but on a fine day, the views make a visit well worthwhile. The Ulster Museum is a must. And you should visit the Second World War Memorial. Few people realise that per capita, Belfast was the most heavily bombed city in Britain. My favourite Belfast watering hole, still gaslit even in 2020. You might enjoy a drink in Europe's most bombed hotel, or a music performance in the Grand Opera House, or the newer Waterfront Concert Hall. Belfast's biggest crowd puller is, of course, Titanic, and the Titanic Belfast exhibition can be very crowded during the main holidays. A vast area of the city is now called Titanic Quarter, and it even has its own railway station. Nomadic was Titanic's tender at Cherbourg, and she's the last surviving White Star ship. The light cruiser HMS Caroline dates from 1914. She is the only surviving vessel from the 1916 Battle of Jutland, and now hosts a wonderful Sonne Lumiere. Experience for yourself what it was like to be aboard during the biggest sea battle of all time. Belfast enjoys excellent public transport, both by bus and rail. But I'm afraid your British bus passes and senior rail cards don't work over here. A short train ride from Belfast brings you to Carltra, home of the Ulster Folk Museum, which really needs at least 2 days to enjoy it all. And the Ulster Transport Museum, as good as any you'll find on the mainland side of the Irish Sea. Choose a fine day to visit the excellent Belfast Zoo, as this is almost entirely an outdoor experience. Downpatrick is supposed to be the burial place of Ireland's patron saint, Patrick, commemorated in a fine cathedral and an impressive modern museum. The town also has a steam railway, but I visited out of season and the line wasn't operating. Lisbon, another cathedral. Oh, and a brewery. Armagh famously has 2 cathedrals, both called St. Patrick's and facing each other across the city. The vast Victorian edifice is Catholic, the older building is Protestant. You can walk much of the way from Belfast to the popular seaside town of Bangor along the North Down coastal path. I did it. A few miles further on is the small harbour of Donaghadee, the original ferry port for Port Patrick in Scotland, before ships became too big for these tiny harbours. On a clear day you can see the Scottish coast from the main street. Sir Samuel Kelly was the Donaghadee lifeboat, which in 1953 rescued 33 of the 44 survivors of the Princess Victoria tragedy, and later, based in County Cork, participated in the 1979 Fastnet race disaster in which 19 lives were lost. The present lifeboat crew includes descendants of the 1953 volunteers, and I chanced to see them returning to harbour after a training exercise at sea. Donaghadee claims to boast the oldest pub in Ireland, but it's only one of several such claims. Derry, or Londonderry, depending on which side of the religious political divide you belong, is a city with a long and troubled history. a guided tour of the city walls is most informative. The railway takes a scenic but circuitous route from Belfast. The bus is frequent, fast and direct, and there's an unusual double-deck road bridge across the River Foyle. And now, let's head south and into the Republic. In my childhood, we would always arrive by way of Dunleary, a small port on Dublin Bay, no longer in use by ferry services. My grandfather, my grandmother, aunt and parents, and myself in 1948. And there's the old house today. I was 14 when I took this photo at Shannon Airport. It seemed to perfectly sum up the paradox that was Ireland in 1960. The 20th century did eventually catch up with the Republic, which was recently declared to be the wealthiest nation within the European Union. This was a derelict ruin when I first discovered it as a teenager. In my 50s, I revisited to find it had been lovingly restored and was lived in by a wealthy American. Sadly, it is now rapidly reverting to its earlier condition. The pub has long been a vital part of Irish culture. But beware if you're driving. The drink-drive limit is lower in the Republic than in England. Now, over the spectacular Connor Pass to the delightful fishing town of Dingle and to see Fungi, a famous Dingle dolphin. Kinsale is another small port in County Cork, nowadays famed for its restaurants. The line Lusitania was torpedoed off the old head of Kinsale in 1915 with heavy loss of life. Cove, formerly known as Queenstown, is the harbour for Cork. It's dominated by the Cathedral of St. Colman. Cove was Titanic's last port of call in 1912. The old railway station is now a museum to the vast numbers of emigrants who left Ireland via this port. And so we come to Ireland's most famous trademark. And her capital city, a thriving, busy 21st century Dublin.